Okay, so Arcane is done and I am conflicted, and I've seen that many other people across the internet are also conflicted about this show, especially Act 3. Season 1 of Arcane, in my opinion, was just perfect. It was a simple story told astronomically well, and I always love revisiting season 1. And before we really get into this, I'm somebody who has never played League. I don't know anything about it, so when I watch Arcane, I watch it from the viewpoint of somebody who knows nothing about League, aside from what my boyfriend tells me. This video and my points in it will be from the perspective of somebody who does not play League. So, Arcane Season 2, was it good? I think it was really good. But was it as great as Season 1? I was going to make a Cyberpunk video to post today, and I'll be working on it once this recording is done, but I really just wanted to air my thoughts out on this, because there's a lot about Season 2 that I loved, but there's a lot of things that kind of left me, like, scratching my head, and this is a really, really casual discussion. I'm not really using a script, I'm using just points. I want to get into it, and I also want everybody, like, if you disagree or agree, or you have points that I didn't even mention, I would love to read your comments in the comment section, because number 1, helps me be a better writer, and number 2, for when I do analyses on all the characters from season 2, because I've done a bunch of season 1 stuff, I would really appreciate more perspectives on every character and storyline in this show, so go to town in the comments. Okay, so to start off with, I want to say the things that I did really like about Arcane's second season, and at the top of the list is Ekko, the boy who shattered time, the boy savior. Like, Ekko, I was worried for a bit that Ekko wasn't going to get a whole lot to do when he disappeared into the Wild Rune and all that with Heimerdinger, but oh my god, episode 7, in my opinion, is the best one in the whole show, and it's not just because it's such a bittersweet story, because you know how it's gonna end, and you see how happy Ekko is with Powder, and how happy Powder is, and how much better the world is in this dimension, even though Vi is gone. Ekko is one of the few characters in the entire show that his development doesn't really need to change all that much throughout the story, because he's always a really good person who is willing to sacrifice everything to save his friends, to save the people he cares about. This guy literally throws away the perfect life with his dream girl in order to go back and prevent the destruction of his home and everybody he knows. And of course, his ending at the end of the story is sad, and you know whose name he's releasing into the sky on that paper he lights on fire, and you feel it. But oh my god, it was just, I loved it. That moment at the end too, where he comes in with his clock arm weapon, and the way they handled the zero drive was really cool. Oh my god, Ekko was 10 out of 10, my favorite part of this whole story. I don't care that he didn't have like a huge development cycle that we witnessed, but damn, like, he's awesome. I also loved the Sevika and Jinx team up. I'm actually surprised, like, I predicted this using the tarot cards that I think were actually meant to talk about Viktor's change in season 1 during the scene where Sevika's gambling, and I'm surprised that I got that right. I loved seeing these two together. They definitely are like a badass aunt-niece kind of combo. I'm just sort of sad we didn't get to see more of them together, as I am a big Sevika fangirl. I love her to death, but I am really happy that Sevika as well became the counselor that represents Zaun, I'm assuming. This lady has seen countless people go in and out of the leadership position of Zaun, and I don't think there's anybody who's more loyal to Zaun, aside from Ekko, to represent the Undercity, and I'm happy that Sevika finally actually gets to stand on her own and sit in her own chair. I'm really happy with that. She deserves it. The other thing I loved is Jinx's story throughout season 2, and I remember reading a lot of things that the writers said that this season was going to flip a lot of things on its head compared to season 1, and watching Jinx kind of develop into a character who was able to, you know, feel like she was doing things right again, to feel that love, to grow, was really awesome, because she's a character who desperately needed to grow and to have her own agency. And it's terrible what happens with Isha and how that shatters Jinx and the state she just ends up plummeting to, but I love how she chose to go out. Whether or not she survived or not, I don't know what to think, to be honest. I've seen the things about her little purple blip zipping away, and then the ending with the airship coinciding with her line in season 1 where she says, "I'm gonna ride in one of those things someday," and then the ending slide being in Jinx's art style. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't, but either way, I'm fine with that being ambiguous. I'm just really happy that Jinx didn't just stay a big baddie. That would have been a cool plotline, but it was nice to see her develop in the same way that Silco and Vander did after their big screw-up moments or their big uh-oh moments, when they got to have that kind of love introduced into their life. I have to say, I really liked the twist with Maddie being a traitor. While I kind of wish there was maybe a bit more, like, hints to show that Maddie was a traitor, I feel like they laid the groundwork really nicely, especially with Ambessa's little, like, professional entanglements thing. Now you had an actual legit reason to not like Maddie, aside from her sleeping with her boss, when everybody knows that Vi and Caitlyn belong together. Oh my god. And speaking of which, Kate and Vi's romance payoff was amazing. I've seen some people complaining about this season being, like, super heavy, like, and I quote, like, woke mind virus, but I'm like, what part of this season having lesbians in it was different from the first season? Did we watch the same show? This was, like, the biggest ship in season 1, and I love how they ended up writing these two characters, the conflict and how they come out of it, and, like, you know, how their love still exists and persists, and where it ends for them. It's just, I love it. And also, that was a very tasteful sex scene, no pun intended, because, you know, they didn't just do, like, a crappy sex position one. It's just, it feels deserved and earned, and I really loved how Kate and Vi's romance just pays off in the end. I love it. I have conflicting feelings about Ambessa, but I love her, and I'm also, like, head-scratching about her. So Ambessa is a force of nature. She is amazing. I love her, and I love the song they released about her, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. It's awesome. But with Ambessa, it does a lot of the time feel like she's just a plot driver with personality, which I'm split on that. I love that because genuinely she is like a force of nature. She feels like it, and I do love that. But then I'm also like, ah, crap. Do I love that? That's my neutral point. I don't know. I'm conflicted there. Either way, all I know is that she's so cool. And her voice actress, amazing. Chef's kiss. In my opinion, the best acted character in the whole show. Like, oh my god.
You have no inkling what family is to me. You are the wolf.
I also love how Arcane handled Viktor's story and that final little bit that Jace says about how Viktor always viewed his disability or his limitations from a physical standpoint as something that needed to be fixed. But then Jace discusses it like it was never a thing that made you lesser. I like that. That's so different from what you see where characters who have disabilities are sort of treated like they're overcoming an obstacle or they need to fix it. Whereas in this case, I think it's really touching what Jace says to Viktor here. And also, Viktor's whole arc here of being Hextech Jesus Doomsday Dude was really awesome too. It does feel legit, it's believable, and it's also really kind of creepy, but also logical in a way that's very, makes you shiver a bit. Singed got the best ending and the best story out of every character in terms of, like, things working out for him. Got his daughter, got to go back to his lab. This guy just continued doing his thing. Good for him. Mel is really cool. I thought Mel was gonna die at the end of season 1, and while I'm sure that would have been a cool plot thing to do too, Mel's design is one of the best in the show. She looks phenomenal. I am fascinated by her powers. I'm fascinated by who her father is. I want to know more, and it seems like they're building up to another story in Noxus where we'll see more of Mel, and I'm very excited to see that. I'm excited to see more LeBlanc, I'm assuming, in the next Arcane story to do with Noxus and Mel and to learn more about the whole Black Rose. The Vandervi and Jinx thing, obviously very touching and very sweet, and God, so heartbreaking. The second act, in my opinion, is where the whole show, like, shined as a whole, because good God, that was like punching a hole through your chest when, oh, poor Vander. And Isha, you know, oh my God, and Jinx, everybody suffered there. Gah. The soundtrack was phenomenal as per usual. The animation is incredible. You can see where they sunk the budget, like, woof. Half the time watching the show, you're just staring at the screen in awe of all the things you're seeing. There's so many details everywhere. Every frame, man. Every single frame has things in it. If I sound like I'm pressing my eyeballs into my head as I think of the sheer amount of detail in this show, then that's because I am. It's overwhelming, and I feel like you could watch this show a dozen times and still have barely scratched the surface of all the detail that they've put in here. The fight choreography is insane. It's amazing, and it's a pleasure to watch. There were so many more fights in season 2, but it was worth it because they all looked amazing. Quote-unquote camera work too in these fights, like that cool move Ambessa does when she's fighting Caitlyn at the end with the leg twist kick thingy. Ooh, I loved it. The other thing too, I'm glad to see Jinx and Vi grew close again, and they had a lot of sisterly moments. I'm glad that they didn't do a full, like, completely flawless reunion or anything like that. I feel like so many stories go for that more contrived thing, which, cliches and whatnot, I like them. They're not necessarily bad, but it wouldn't have felt right, especially for Jinx, and for where Vi went as a character too. Which, in my opinion, Vi didn't go really anywhere as a character this season. Not too much, but we'll get into that. I loved crazy Jace slogging through Dark Souls and going crazy while Ekko is having the time of his life. That was fantastic. Also, while Heimerdinger has a music career, good for him. And I like that Jinx did not fall into the typical rebel leader kind of archetype all of a sudden, because that wouldn't have made any sense for her character. I like that the Jinx that was inspiring the rebels was primarily Isha in a lot of ways. Jinx is too traumatized and she's done with all this stuff. She just wanted to live a quiet life with the one person she had left that she cared about very deeply. And that Jinx comes in the end for Isha because of what Ekko says to her, I love it. But this is where I get into the things that made me scratch my head. For me, I was a bit let down that this season wasn't so much about Zaun versus Piltover. I'm not complaining about Noxus's involvement, it's just, for me, that was more interesting. I would have liked to have seen a lot more Zaun versus Piltover. And I know we got some, but like, I wish there was more. That conflict sort of felt sidelined by, you know, the Hextech plot and the Noxus plot, which I think if there was 12 episodes, they could have nailed it down really good, all of these conflicts, and tied it all together. Sometimes in season 2, it sort of felt like the events of season 1, and this is how my boyfriend put it, which I thought was very, very on the head. A lot of the events of season 1 just sort of felt like a prequel to the events of season 2, not its own chapter in this story. Which I do kind of agree with a bit. It felt like everything was tied up so quickly from the season 1 plot in Act 1, but I don't know. I would have liked to have seen more of that, but again, I think that's just like a 9 versus 12 episode thing. I also found that Vi was actually not a super active character in this season, which could simply be, you know, maybe that was intentional because Vi was a very active character in season 1, and here she is just sort of like exhausted and done with it, but sometimes it felt like Vi was just being dragged around. I don't know. I loved the plot points of Isha, and even though I knew Isha was gonna die, and even though I usually don't like it when, like, a child is introduced into a story to, you know, add an emotional punch eventually for one of the other major characters, I feel like with Isha we didn't have enough time, I guess, personally, for me to feel like that big ooh no when she did her final run. You feel more for Jinx in that moment, at least I did, than I did about the kid dying. I was like, well, and I just think that's a thing that would have been better fleshed out if there was 12 episodes instead of 9. The other thing too that I was like, Caitlyn's big baddie squad that goes into Zaun, I was a little like, what? Because the only character that really felt like had a purpose was Maddie, But, you know, like the Abe Sapien looking guy was just sort of there. Loris even too. I found Loris was kind of like, eh. I honestly thought that Maddie and Loris were gonna be like Black Rose agents or something. Especially with Caitlyn's little flashback with the black petals raining down and everything like that. I thought the Black Rose was gonna have more of a presence in the plot. Another thing too, while I can appreciate the use of the music video segments in a lot of the episodes that sort of tie in how characters might be feeling or events that otherwise couldn't be fleshed out in a more longer fashion, I was a little disappointed that the Chem Barons were wiped out in that one montage. I actually didn't realize it the first time. My boyfriend pointed it out and I was like, oh my god, they're dead. Just like that. And I mean, I get it. They had other things they wanted to cover. And they tied that up at least, which is nice. But still, it just sort of was like, I would have loved to have seen a little more on that. Also, I'm kind of sad the Firelights didn't have more to do. They seem so cool in season 1, and then they're just kind of relegated to background characters who fly around and wear cool outfits. I would have loved to have seen the Sevika joining up with the Bat Dad there. That was pretty cool. I was like, how'd that happen? I know that neither of them are main characters that the story follows, but still, I'm very curious. I have many questions. The other thing too is I kind of wish we'd seen Jinx tell Sevika that she was the one who killed Silco. I don't think we ever saw that discussion, but it would have been a nice kind of prerequisite to the sort of bond they end up having where they work together. Because I could totally see Sevika actually kind of consoling Jinx a bit here. Maybe after a moment of feeling like she needs to take her out, but then being like, what the hell am I even doing anymore? It's all dead. It just would have been cool to see like that moment between the two. It just feels like a very important development point. Because I don't know if Sevika is aware that Jinx killed Silco. Does she tell anybody that? I loved season 2, but I think it would have been fantastic and perfect if it had 12 episodes instead of 9. That's just what I think. A friend of my boyfriend also made this point too, which I also think hits the nail on the head. While he agrees that a more focused Zon Piltover storyline would have been better as a standalone story, separate from League, if Arcane was its own thing, the world-ending plotline with the stupid high stakes fits the overall feel of League of Legends better. Which, again, I'm just someone who hasn't played League, I've just seen Arcane. So I think that that is an important bit of context to take into account with everything that I have already said. Maybe if you played League, this season felt super solid and satisfying. But for me, season 2 just didn't quite hit the same way season 1 did. The storyline in season 1 felt more intimate and personal, whereas this one felt a little more broader stakes kind of thing, and maybe that's just my preference. But I will say, and I don't think anybody would disagree that 12 episodes would have been amazing. Who wouldn't want to see more Arcane? I don't think it's a pacing issue like a lot of people have said. I think it's genuinely just a budget issue. Which some people might say the 12 versus 9 episode thing is a pacing thing, but I think it was just a budget thing. It's still really good. I enjoyed it. It was a blast to watch Arcane Season 2 as it came out, and I will enjoy looking over it again when I analyze all the characters. But those are just my random jumbles of thoughts about Season 2. Still prefer Season 1. Season 2's good too, just not, my favorite. Let me know what you thought of Arcane's second season in the comments, whether you loved it or hated it or were just okay with it. Let me know if you disagree or you have anything to add with anything I've said here. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next one, have a good one, guys.